She sent her own mother to the grave. 15 years later, justice brought her face to face with herself. Her triumph was only the beginning of her downfall. Subscribe and activate the bell. The sun set over Greenwich, Connecticut, painting the Hayes mansion in amber and gold. Old money, generations of privilege wrapped in ivy-covered walls and mahogany libraries. Olivia Hayes stood in the grand foyer at 26, brilliant and compassionate, a rising star at a prestigious Manhattan law firm. She had just won her first major case, defending a wrongfully accused teacher. Justice was more than a word carved into courthouse marble. It was her calling. "Mom's signing the papers today," she said, smoothing her jacket. Martha Hayes, the 72-year-old matriarch of the family fortune, was putting her affairs in order after recent health scares. Olivia walked through familiar halls, past portraits of ancestors whose names she'd memorized as a child. The Hayes legacy wasn't just about money, it was about responsibility, about using privilege to lift others up. At least, that's what she believed. Her sister Cassandra stood by the window, champagne already in hand at 4 in the afternoon. At 32, beautiful and effortless, Cassie had spent a decade burning through her trust fund between Manhattan penthouses and European vacations. "Little sister," Cassie called out, her voice dripping with something Olivia couldn't name. "Come celebrate. Mom's finally being sensible." Something in her sister's eyes made Olivia uneasy, though she couldn't say what. In the library, Martha Hayes signed documents with Peter Thorne, a distant cousin who'd handled Hayes' family legal matters for years. "I want both my girls taken care of equally, fairly, that's what matters." But fairness meant different things to different people. To Cassandra, equal meant half. Half meant not enough. And not enough was intolerable. That night, Cassandra and Peter met in the garden house. "She's splitting everything 50-50, Cassandra hissed. "That sanctimonious little brat gets the same as me?" Peter adjusted his glasses nervously. "The will is executed. It's legal. I'm offering you 15% of my share, Peter. Millions, enough to retire." His moral backbone cracked under temptation. What did you have in mind? They would forge documents, create a paper trail showing Olivia's alleged instability, then accuse her of attempting to murder Martha, to bury her alive for the inheritance. The thought was monstrous. The execution was worse. 3 days later, Martha had a severe stroke, induced by sedatives Peter obtained and Cassandra administered. Martha slipped into a medically induced coma at a private facility. The doctors were well paid and incurious. Olivia returned from a Boston conference to find police cars at the mansion. "Olivia Hayes? You're under arrest for attempted murder and elder abuse." "What?" "No. We found disturbed earth in the garden. Your fingerprints on gardening tools. Testimony from your sister and attorney about erratic behavior and threats." Olivia saw Cassandra in the doorway, her face a perfect mask of grief. Their eyes met. Olivia saw the flash of triumph, the cold hatred that had been lurking beneath the surface all along. "I'm so sorry, Liv," Cassandra said, her voice breaking perfectly. "I never wanted to believe it." The headlines were merciless. "Golden Girl Gone Wrong." Inheritance greed drives attorney to attempted murder. The trial was swift and brutal. The evidence, entirely fabricated, was compelling. Peter testified with gravitas. Cassandra wept on the stand. Verdict: guilty. Sentence: 20 years in a psychiatric facility. The judge called it mercy, considering her obvious mental illness. Olivia was processed at the Riverside Psychiatric Facility in upstate New York. On her first night, she curled up on the narrow bed and sobbed until there were no tears left. They had taken everything: her freedom, reputation, mother. The injustice was physical pain. Meanwhile, Cassandra moved into the mansion and began liquidating assets. Peter received his 15%. They toasted with vintage champagne, convinced they'd committed the perfect crime. Martha remained in her coma, hidden under a false name. 8 months passed in fog, medication, therapy sessions where she learned to stop protesting innocence, group activities designed to keep residents docile. Winter came hard. Olivia spent days in the common room, staring at snow-covered grounds, feeling pieces of herself disappear. She'd lost everything that defined her. The thought of giving up became seductive. What if she just stopped fighting, stopped hoping, stopped hurting? One brutal January night, she found herself on the floor, knees to chest, rocking. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I couldn't protect you. I failed you." But even then, something stubborn remained. You know the truth. You know you're innocent. As long as you're breathing, you can fight. In the West Wing lived Judge Nathaniel Sterling, 73, who'd checked himself in years ago after his wife's death, disillusioned with a justice system that served the powerful over the vulnerable. Nathaniel had read Olivia's case. It stank of fabrication, convenient evidence, perfect timeline, unified testimony. He knew a frame job when he saw one. He watched her deterioration, saw her hit bottom, and saw the tiny spark that refused to die. That's when he decided to act. In February, Judge Sterling approached Olivia in the library. "Miss Hayes, may I sit?" "Sure. You were framed," he said without preamble. "Your sister and the lawyer conspired to steal your inheritance. Your mother is alive in a medically induced coma. The evidence was fabricated. Am I correct?" Olivia's heart stopped. Hearing someone speak her truth felt like oxygen after drowning. "Yes, but no one believes me. I've read your case. It's sloppy work. Your defender missed a dozen holes in the prosecution's story." His voice was bitter. "But that doesn't mean you have to stay broken." "What are you saying?" "I can teach you everything I learned in 30 years on the bench. Criminal law, forensics, information manipulation. Then I can help you disappear. You can't fight this as Olivia Hayes. That identity is destroyed. But as someone new, you'd have a chance. Why would you help me? Because I failed too many people from that bench. I'm done with rules. I'm interested in real justice now." That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Nathaniel's offer had ignited something, that dying spark flaring back to life. For the first time in months, she felt anger. Clean, focused, purposeful anger. The next morning, she found him in the courtyard. "I'm in. Teach me everything," he nodded. "This won't be easy. You'll need to let go of who you were, the idealistic lawyer who believed in the system." "That woman is dead." "I know," Olivia said. The old Olivia had died on that January night. What remained was harder, colder, capable of survival, capable of revenge. The education began immediately. Every day after mandatory activities, Olivia met with Nathaniel. He'd gained access to legal databases, news archives, case studies. "Forget law school," he told her. "That was law for idealists. I'm teaching law for survivors." They studied criminal procedure from a different angle, not defending the innocent, but constructing frames that held up under scrutiny. How to manipulate evidence, exploit psychology, and bias. Your sister understood. The legal system doesn't seek truth. It seeks compelling narrative. She gave them one that fit expectations. Olivia absorbed everything. She studied forensic accounting, corporate structures, shell companies, offshore accounts. She learned information manipulation, planting stories, using media, controlling narratives. The physical transformation began. Nathaniel arranged for hair dye, different clothes, makeup. Olivia's dark brown hair became auburn, then blonde. She lost weight, changed her mannerisms, speech patterns, even her walk. She was killing Olivia Hayes and birthing someone new. The escape plan took 6 months. It required patience and complicity from key staff: a passed-over nurse, a debt-drowning guard, a maintenance worker who hated administration. The final piece was identity. Nathaniel used old connections to construct Aurora Steele's complete background: birth certificate, social security, school records, a tragic backstory. Orphaned at 16, raised by a wealthy aunt who'd recently died. "When you walk out," Nathaniel told her the night before, "Olivia Hayes stays behind. Mentally, emotionally, you can't afford to slip up once. I understand. Do you? Because you need to be willing to pay the price. Years of rebuilding, loneliness, constant vigilance. Olivia thought of her mother unconscious, her sister living on stolen money, Peter complicit in destroying her life, and herself, the naive girl who'd trusted in decency. I'm ready. The escape happened on a rainy March night. Security cameras malfunctioned. The night guard stepped away precisely on time. A delivery van waited at the service entrance. Aurora slipped through shadows one last time. In her pocket, a gold locket from her mother. Everything else was left behind. She turned back to where Nathaniel watched from a window. He raised one hand in farewell. "Thank you," Aurora mouthed. The van pulled into the night, carrying Aurora Steele toward her new life. Behind her, Olivia Hayes remained, a ghost, a cautionary tale. Good. Aurora had no use for that poisoned identity anymore. Aurora arrived in Los Angeles 3 days later, exhausted. The California sun felt aggressive after years of New York winters. She found a cheap motel and spent the first week sleeping, trying to orient herself. She had 3 months of money if she was careful. Aurora started at the bottom. She found waitressing work at a diner near LAX. 12-hour shifts, demanding customers, constant grease and coffee smell. Everything ached, but she showed up on time every day. She smiled, memorized orders, never complained. She became invisible the way service workers often are. At night, in her tiny studio, Aurora studied. She haunted the library obsessively. Criminal law, civil procedure, business law, contract negotiation. She also tracked her enemies. Cassandra had fully taken over the Hayes fortune, becoming a Manhattan socialite. The tabloids loved her. Beautiful, wealthy, tragic. Peter had upgraded his practice to a prestigious midtown firm. The urge to expose them was overwhelming. But Nathaniel's words echoed, "Patience is the deadliest weapon. Strike when they're comfortable, when they've forgotten to look over their shoulders." After 6 months waitressing, Aurora took the LSAT. Scored 99th percentile. Applied to night law school programs. Was accepted with a small scholarship. For 3 years, Aurora lived split. Days at the diner, nights at law school, stolen hours for sleep. No social life, no relationships, no leisure. Every moment dedicated to rebuilding herself into something stronger, sharper, more dangerous. She graduated summa cum laude. Passed the California bar on first try. At 29, Aurora Steele was officially a lawyer again, but not criminal defense or civil rights. She took a position at a mid-sized corporate litigation firm. She learned the language of business, how the wealthy protected assets, how the truly rich operated in a world with different rules, and she was ruthlessly good. Within 2 years, junior partner. Within 5, senior partner. At 35, she left to start Steele & Associates, specializing in high-stakes litigation and crisis management. The transformation was complete. Aurora Steele was sophisticated, intimidating, brilliant. She wore power suits and expensive jewelry. She commanded rooms and made million-dollar decisions without hesitation. Nobody would see the broken woman who'd arrived in LA 12 years ago. Nobody would connect her to Olivia Hayes. That was exactly the point. By her 40th birthday, Aurora was a multimillionaire with a penthouse, designer wardrobe, powerful connections. But none of it mattered. It was all preparation. 15 years after escaping Riverside, Aurora Steele was finally ready to return home. The move east was presented as business expansion. Steele & Associates opening a New York office. Nobody questioned it, but Aurora's real goal, a criminal court judge position opening in Westchester County. The retiring judge was Nathaniel's colleague. Getting appointed required 6 months of groundwork, donations to write campaigns, write fundraisers, write introductions. She was wealthy enough to matter, successful enough to impress, with an impeccable background. The appointment came through. Judge Aurora Steele would preside starting January. The ceremony was covered by local media, but Aurora kept speeches brief. She wanted minimal attention, Greenwich was in her jurisdiction, where everything had begun. Aurora rented a modest White Plains home. Nothing flashy. She needed to seem above reproach. Her first months on the bench were careful, methodical. She built a reputation as tough but principled, made connections with local attorneys, prosecutors, law enforcement, and she began her real investigation. Martha Hayes was alive, confirmed through medical records and facility databases. In a private Pennsylvania facility, still in medically induced coma, listed under a false name with bills paid through shell companies. The medical necessity had long passed. Martha was kept unconscious for one reason, preventing her from revealing the truth. Aurora obtained security footage through unofficial channels. Watching Cassandra stand over their mother's body filled her with focused determination. Peter Thorne had prospered. His firm was prestigious. He'd married, had children, lived in a beautiful Scarsdale home, but Aurora dug deeper. Peter had a hidden gambling problem, debts to questionable people, a second mortgage, tax issues that wouldn't survive scrutiny. Most interesting, he was still Cassandra's personal attorney. Aurora began selecting cases strategically. A fraud case involving Peter's client, a money laundering investigation touching structures Peter created. Nothing direct, but close enough to make him nervous. She was tightening the net. And Peter began unraveling. Filing errors, missed deadlines, marriage strain, mounting gambling debts. Perfect. Cassandra had grown careless. 15 years of success made her complacent. She threw lavish parties, gave lifestyle magazine interviews about her journey through tragedy, even wrote a memoir, Surviving Betrayal, a sister's story. The book made Aurora physically ill. The lies were brazen. Cassandra had fully inhabited the victim role, convinced herself she deserved everything she'd stolen. The trap was set in November. One of Peter's shell companies was indicted on financial fraud and tax evasion charges. The case landed on Judge Steele's docket. Not random. Aurora had worked behind the scenes with the prosecutor, providing anonymous tips, pointing toward evidence. But once indicted, everything following would be legal and above board. Peter Thorne entered her courtroom on a gray December morning. Aurora watched him. Weight loss, dark circles, trembling hands. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? "Mr. Thorne," Aurora said coolly, "I understand you're representing the defendant?" "Yes, Your Honor." His voice cracked. "The defense moves to dismiss based on, I've read your motion, denied. Evidence is sufficient for trial." Aurora looked directly at him. "Mr. Thorne, are you all right? You seem unsettled." "I'm fine, Your Honor, just a difficult week. I imagine it has been." She let the words hang. "Let's set a trial date. And, Mr. Thorne, I expect all discovery materials on time. No extensions. No excuses, clear?" "Yes, Your Honor." Over following weeks, Aurora systematically dismantled Peter's defenses. Every motion denied. Every delay tactic shut down. Every negotiation attempt met with judicial skepticism. Always fair, always within bounds, but relentless. She could see him breaking. Written in every haggard appearance, every fumbled argument, every desperate glance. The guilt he'd buried for 15 years was rising, dragged up by her scrutiny. Peter Thorne was discovering some debts can never be paid. Some crimes carry seeds of their own destruction. And Aurora watched from her position of ultimate authority, the architect of his unraveling. They had used the law to destroy Olivia Hayes. Now she would use it to destroy them. The breaking point came in February during a routine evidence hearing. Peter stood before the bench, shuffling papers with trembling hands. "Your Honor, I need to request a continuance. I'm not prepared." "Mr. Thorne, this is the third request in 3 weeks. All denied. Trial begins Monday as planned. But, Your Honor, there are complications. Are you withdrawing as counsel?" Silence stretched. Peter looked up at her, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. "No, Your Honor." "Then we proceed. Anything else?" Peter hesitated, then shook his head. But his hands shook worse than before. That evening, Peter requested a private judge meeting. Highly irregular, but his voice suggested desperation. Aurora agreed, with her clerk present for propriety. They met in her chambers after hours. Peter looked worse than ever. Rumpled suit, unkempt hair, wild eyes. "Judge Steele," he began. "Do I know you? We've never met before these proceedings. It's just something about you. The way you look at me. Like you can see." He trailed off, shook his head. "I'm losing my mind. Why did you request this meeting?" "I need to withdraw. I can't do this anymore." "Can't do what, exactly?" The crack widened into a chasm. Peter sank into the chair, head in hands. "I've done terrible things," he whispered. "Things that haunt me every day. I thought I could live with it. Thought the money would make it worth it. But it doesn't." Aurora's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. "Mr. Thorne, if you're confessing to criminal activity, 15 years ago, I helped frame an innocent woman. We forged documents, fabricated evidence, put her in a psychiatric facility. And we kept her mother, Martha Hayes, in a coma, hidden away so she couldn't reveal the truth." The words poured out like poison. Her sister, Cassandra, planned it all. "I went along for money. God help me for money." The clerk's pen froze. Aurora felt time crystallize around this moment. "Are you referring to Olivia Hayes? She didn't do it. She never did any of it. We did, Cassandra and me. We destroyed her life." Peter looked up, tears streaming. "I can't carry this anymore. Whatever happens, I don't care. I need to tell the truth." Aurora stood, moving to the window so Peter couldn't see her face. "Mr. Thorne, you're confessing to conspiracy, fraud, kidnapping, false imprisonment. You understand?" "Yes." "And you're prepared to provide evidence? Testify under oath?" "Yes. Just, please. Martha Hayes is in a Pennsylvania facility under the name Margaret Sterling. She's still alive, kept in that coma for 15 years. You have to get her out." Aurora turned back. "Where is this facility?" Peter provided every detail. The clerk documented everything, face pale. "Your Honor," the clerk whispered, "this is extraordinary." "Yes." Aurora pressed the intercom. "Get me the DA immediately. And the FBI field office. We move tonight." Within hours, real justice was in motion. Federal agents raided the Pennsylvania facility. Martha Hayes was found exactly where Peter said, still unconscious. Medical teams began bringing her out of the coma. It would take time. 15 years had taken a toll, but doctors were cautiously optimistic. Cassandra was arrested at a Manhattan gallery opening, handcuffed before cameras and socialites. Charges: conspiracy, kidnapping, fraud, attempted murder. The media erupted. Hayes, heiress, arrested. Sister framed sister. Mother found after 15 years. Slowly, the truth about Olivia Hayes emerged. The conviction was revealed as a travesty. The governor ordered immediate review. Within weeks, Olivia Hayes was officially exonerated. But where was Olivia Hayes? That was everyone's question. The facility reported she'd escaped years ago, whereabouts unknown. Aurora watched it unfold from her chambers, maintaining composure. She'd achieved her goal. Truth was revealed. Real justice was being served. But the cost was suddenly, painfully clear. Martha woke 3 weeks after rescue. The process was gradual, her body weak from years of immobility, mind confused. When told what happened, she wept. For her youngest daughter destroyed by her eldest. For 15 stolen years. "Olivia," she whispered. "Where is Olivia? I need to see her." But no one could answer. Olivia Hayes had disappeared. Aurora read updates obsessively, sitting alone with untouched wine. Her mother was awake, alive, asking for her, and Aurora couldn't answer. Revealing herself would expose everything. The escape, false identity, years of deception. It would undermine her position, call every case into question, provide grounds for appeals. Worse, she'd presided over Peter's case while having personal stake. Clear violation of judicial ethics, grounds for disbarment, possibly criminal charges. She'd broken the law to expose criminals. She'd corrupted justice to achieve justice. Now she was trapped by the system she'd weaponized. The irony was suffocating. Aurora met with Dr. Samuel Chen, a therapist who knew the broad strokes of her story. She needed perspective. "What do you want?" Dr. Chen asked simply. "I want my mother to know I'm alive. I want—" Aurora's voice broke. "I want to be Olivia again, just for a moment. Just long enough to tell her I love her. Then that's your answer. But the consequences will be what they are." He leaned forward. "You've spent 15 years becoming powerful enough to achieve revenge. You succeeded. But revenge isn't peace. Power isn't connection. This penthouse, your position, your reputation, what are they worth if you can't do what matters most?" Aurora sat with that question. What kind of person did she want to be? Not Olivia Hayes. That naive girl was gone. Not entirely Aurora Steele either, someone in between. Someone broken and rebuilt. Someone who understood both the system's power and its limitations. "I need to see my mother," Aurora said finally, "whatever it costs." The next day, Aurora submitted her resignation, effective immediately. Stated reason: personal matters. It raised eyebrows, but there was no scandal alleged. She arranged a private meeting at Martha's Rehabilitation Center. Aurora stood outside her mother's room for a long moment, gathering courage. 15 years had passed. She was 41 now. Would Martha even recognize her? She pushed open the door. Martha sat by the window, thinner, gray-haired, face lined with suffering. But her eyes, sharp, intelligent, kind, were the same. Those eyes turned toward Aurora, and recognition flickered immediately. Mothers know their children. "Olivia?" Barely a whisper. Aurora's composure shattered. She crossed the room and fell to her knees beside Martha's chair, burying her face in her mother's lap. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I couldn't save you. I failed you." Martha's hand stroked her hair gently. "Oh, my darling girl. You survived. That's all that matters." They held each other and wept. For years lost, pain endured, family destroyed. But also for this moment of reunion, this impossible second chance. When Aurora raised her head, Martha studied her face with wonder. "You're so different, so strong, so hard. I had to be, to survive, to come back, to save you." "Tell me everything," Martha said. "I want to know who you became," Aurora told her. "The facility, Nathaniel, the escape and LA years, the transformation into Aurora Steele, the careful construction of revenge." Martha listened, tears streaming. "I'm proud of you, proud of your strength. But Olivia, Aurora, whoever you are now, revenge isn't a legacy. It's not something to build a life on. I know. That's why I resigned. I can't keep being that person who twisted the system. It worked, but it wasn't right. So what will you do now? Help people, the way I used to want to, but smarter this time. More strategic. I can use everything I've learned, all the darkness, to actually help people the system has failed." Martha smiled, the first real smile. "That sounds like my daughter. Not the girl you were, but the woman you've become. I like her, even though she broke 100 laws getting here. Even though. Justice and the law aren't always the same. You taught me that. They talked for hours, rebuilding connection. It wasn't the same, too much had changed, but it was real and precious and hard-won." As Aurora prepared to leave, Martha asked, "What about Cassandra?" Aurora felt familiar anger, then breathed through it. "She'll face trial, spend years in prison, lose everything. That's enough." "Is it?" Truly. It has to be, because if it's not, if I need more revenge, then she's still controlling my life, and I'm done letting her have that power. Martha nodded approvingly. When did you get so wise? When I realized winning isn't the same as healing. Aurora kissed her mother's forehead. I'll be back tomorrow, and every day after. We have 15 years to catch up on. I'd like that very much. Cassandra's trial was brief. With Peter's testimony, documented evidence, and Martha's confirmation, there was no defense. The plea deal: 25 years, eligible for parole in 15. The supreme irony, 15 years, exactly what Olivia had lost, wasn't lost on anyone. Aurora attended the sentencing, sitting in back where Cassandra wouldn't notice. She wanted to see her sister's face when the sentence came down. But when the moment arrived, Aurora felt something unexpected. Pity. Not forgiveness. That was too much. But pity for the woman who'd had everything and thrown it away for more. Pity for someone so consumed by greed she'd destroyed her own family. Cassandra turned as bailiffs led her away, and their eyes met. Recognition flared. Cassandra, finally. Seeing through the disguise to the sister she'd tried to bury. Her face went white. Her mouth opened. Aurora simply nodded once, then walked out. That chapter was finally, truly closed. The aftermath was complicated. Aurora's resignation and identity revelation created legal and ethical mess. Investigations, hearings, questions about bias in her cases. The consensus: while her actions were ethically questionable, her rulings had been legally sound. Olivia Hayes's exoneration was upheld. Peter's confession was deemed voluntary. Her cases stood, but Aurora would never be a judge again. She didn't mind. That identity had served its purpose. Instead, with Martha's encouragement and her own resources, Aurora established the Hayes Foundation for Legal Justice. Mission: providing pro bono defense for people failed by the system. The foundation focused on wrongful conviction, judicial misconduct, inadequate representation. Aurora used everything she'd learned to fight for the powerless against the powerful. She was ruthlessly effective. The foundation won case after case, overturning convictions, exposing corruption, forcing the system to acknowledge failures. Aurora became known as the Phoenix Lawyer, the attorney risen from ashes to help others do the same. The media loved the story. Martha recovered slowly but steadily. She moved in with Aurora, not to the penthouse which was sold, but to a comfortable Brooklyn brownstone where they could rebuild their relationship. They had dinner together every evening. They talked about everything and nothing. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard moments, still grief, but it was real and good and enough. One evening, nearly a year after Martha's rescue, they visited the Hayes family plot in Greenwich. The mansion had been sold. The estate broken up. All that remained was this quiet cemetery. They stood before Martha's husband's grave. "I used to think legacy meant money," Martha said quietly. "Property. The family name on buildings. That's what I was trying to preserve. You were being fair. Cassandra's choices weren't your fault." "Maybe, but I raised her too. Or maybe some people are just broken in ways we can't fix." Aurora took her mother's hand. "You can't blame yourself. We're all responsible for what we become." Martha smiled sadly. "When did you get so philosophical?" "Prison psychiatry. Very enlightening." They stood in comfortable silence, then Martha spoke again. "What's our legacy now? The Hayes name is ruined. The fortune is gone. Maybe that's not bad. Maybe the real legacy isn't trust funds and real estate. Maybe it's what we do with the time we have, the people we help, the ways we try to make things better. The foundation. The foundation. And just being better than we were, being honest about our mistakes. That's worth more than any inheritance." Martha squeezed her hand. "I think your father would be proud of you. I know I am. Even though I'm not really Olivia anymore, You're exactly Olivia. Just the version that survived. That's the most honest version anyone can be." They walked back to the car, leaving ghosts behind in that quiet cemetery. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, complicated, but finally theirs to shape. Aurora had achieved everything she'd set out to do. She'd cleared her name, saved her mother, destroyed her enemies. She'd become powerful and wealthy and successful. But the real victory was simpler. She'd survived. She'd rebuilt herself from nothing. She'd transformed pain into purpose, and she'd learned that justice wasn't about revenge or punishment. Real justice was about restoration, restoring dignity to the wrongfully accused, restoring faith in a broken system, restoring herself to her own humanity. The phoenix hadn't just risen from the ashes. She'd learned to fly. Years later, when people asked Aurora about her journey, she would tell them, "Everyone thinks the hardest part was the injustice, or the years lost, or the fight to expose truth. But the hardest part was letting go of anger, learning that victory isn't healing, that you can win every battle and still lose yourself." She'd pause, looking out her foundation office window at the Brooklyn street below. "The system failed me, spectacularly. But I had a choice. Become bitter and consumed, or use my understanding of how it breaks to help fix it for others. I chose the latter, not because I'm noble or forgiving, but because I realized the best revenge against injustice isn't more injustice. It's creating something better." "So you've forgiven your sister?" they'd ask. "No," Aurora would answer honestly. "Forgiveness is complex and not always possible. But I've moved past needing to hate her. She'll spend decades in prison. That's consequence enough. I don't need to carry that anger anymore." That was the truth that took 15 years to learn. The truth Nathaniel tried to teach, that Dr. Chen guided her toward, that Martha recognized immediately. Power without purpose is just destruction. Revenge without healing is just another prison. Justice without mercy is just another form of cruelty. Aurora Hayes, or Aurora Steele, or whoever she was. The name mattered less than the person, had found her purpose. Not in punishing the guilty, though sometimes that was necessary, but in defending the innocent, exposing truth, using her knowledge of the system's darkest corners to shine light into them. She'd been buried alive 15 years ago, in every way that mattered. But she'd clawed back to the surface, and now she spent her days making sure others didn't suffer the same fate. That was her legacy. That was her redemption. That was enough.